Welcome to the Real Dad Podcast. I'm Dave.
I'm Joey.
I'm Brent.
I was a little disappointed that you didn't do a voice today.
To throw off our guest.
I'm Brian. Let's Dad.
Never thought I'd hear him say that. Disappointed. Every time he's just...
It just cuts you deep.
I'm not gonna lie, I played around with a few on the drive up. But then I had that moment of like, we're saying our names so that people can recognize our voice so that they can identify who's talking. Maybe I should just do a clean one. And we went clean, so we discovered it wasn't. We don't like it. Okay,
I do like cracking up. Like it's not a bad thing.
Just run it back. I came for the intro, and you were
the only
boring.
reason you're here.
Oh, let's be serious all of a sudden, guys. Let's pretend like we know what we're talking about. Great idea, Dave.
Bunch of idiots.
So as you can tell, we have our wonderful friend Brent Walker in the new podcast space with us. This is his first time on
Where do
camera.
I look there? Here?
Oh,
there?
I don't even
Yeah,
know
just
how
keep it
many
right
times
here.
Brent's been on now. It's
I'll
been,
just stare at Joey's eyes.
Yeah, he's officially a reoccurring character
Right?
of
Oh,
the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are new to the show, Brent is our self-proclaimed #1 fan. He has his own text
I don't know
group
if it's self-proclaimed.
with
There's
us
a few people that are...
that he labeled #1 fan, Brent Walker. He's putting in the work. He even joined the Patreon so that he could stay true to his name.
go. True.
Yep.
a big
So
deal.
big shout out to that. But our good friend Mark isn't with us today. He had a busy weekend working all weekend long, and he made the smart decision to be home with the family today.
Yep.
We've had that a few times. Mark lives farther away from the podcast booth, so it's not an easy trip over here. But also, I just want to say how much I honor Mark in the time that he's been taking to do that with the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's making the conscious choice to be there for that time
Way to go, buddy.
and catch up on that. So yeah, good job, Mark. And then Brent, thank you for jumping in.
Yeah.
You're welcome. But just so you know, I will not do what Mark would do. So like if you ask me and like things are happening in my house, I'll leave them. Like I won't look.
Abandon
I
my
won't
family.
acknowledge it. That's not a lie. Like you have no idea what I left, and I gotta go. The podcast call.
I mean, when you get the call up,
I
you
can't
gotta...
say I'm a #1 fan and then put my family first. It just doesn't. there can't be two firsts in my
Yeah,
life,
they
boys.
have to be too. Yeah, no, I got you.
Love that. I asked Brent over the weekend because we went to a ball hockey tournament that Brent was hosting at his school.
Nice.
So it was a pretty cool event and something that I wasn't expecting. So they've been running this tournament for quite a while now.
9 years.
9 years. So next year will be the 10th.
Yep.
Oh, we got to help do something big for the 10th. So I
Yeah,
think that's a
absolutely.
big thing.
I like that. RDP on board? Can we book it?
Maybe.
yeah.
So,
It's,
is this kids playing ball hockey?
It's kids
or
playing
adults?
ball hockey.
Well,
so it is charity to raise money for Sick Kids Hospital.
Nice.
In honor of a past student that went to Brent's school.
Nice.
Who passed away from cancer, I believe.
Cancer. It is the Braver Than Brave Foundation, Tucker Williams.
Oh, cool.
So if you look it up, you'll
Yeah.
see some stuff on it.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And I didn't know that this had been going on for all these years. My kids have been going to the school, which is close to Brent's school, and they've been involved in this tournament all these years. I'm like, why did my son not tell me about this? What is going on? But it was my daughter Aria who came home the second they announced it at school with the flyer being like, Dad, you got to fill this out right now. I'm like, what is this for? And she's like, ball hockey tournament. And I was like, you want to play ball
Sign
hockey?
on the
I
spot.
was like,
He can't return a permission form for a
okay.
trip for sure.
Yeah.
But ball hockey tournament,
Oh, that's back the same
give me
day.
the pen, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was so impressed that she wanted to do it.
Nice.
First of all, and then you had to pay $10 to that was going to go to the charity, and she even used her own $10 to do it.
Oh, wow.
Mainly because we didn't have any cash in the house,
Yeah, that's
so that was that. But she
Bill's a
might
bill.
come back for us, but she hasn't claimed it yet.
She give you your Venmo or?
But it was cool. The kids had to wear a hockey helmet with a cage, and they had to have gloves, and they played ball hockey out in the parking lot. So I had multiple times leading up to this that I had some really cool quality time with Aria, where one going to buy her new hockey gloves and a helmet that fits her,
Right.
and then two practicing outside a few times, trying to teach her a few things on what to do as she's trying to mentally prepare herself for it.
Right.
And then 3, getting ready to go to the event. And she was feeling a little anxiety, thinking there's going to be all these hockey kids there. I'm going to be the only girl. I don't want to let my team down. Playing what you play through in your head.
Yeah.
we do it as adults, and it blows me away that kids do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And how you think something is going to play out. Like you were almost rehearsing it in your mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I looked at the sheet. I'm like, they're not keeping score. This isn't like a serious tournament. It is a tournament to celebrate somebody's life, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, it's just for fun. Like, this is why you're doing this.
Right.
And this is who you're honoring by doing this. And she kind of calmed down and went out. And she had so much fun. Like, it was a beautiful, sunny day, parking lot, 3 games going on at a time, people hanging around inside. I ran into old friends that were from other schools and their kids were there. So you got to meet, like, a guy I knew from high school, his kid, and like chat with him for a bit. So it was such an amazing event. Amazing MC, Bren Walker
you. That's
running
very
the thing. It was a really, really cool tournament. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
We should qualify as well that we keep saying Brent School. Brent is a phys ed teacher. For
No,
those
he
who don't
owns
know.
the school, right?
Yeah. He's running ahead of the school he teaches at.
Well, it's awesome. A few things about it. One, I appreciate you acknowledging it here. It's really awesome that the word gets out there. Because we do really well in raising funds. I think the actual foundation has raised over $244,000.
Wow, that's
So it's
awesome.
done really well. Now the tournament has it's gone through some growing and adjusting pains where when we started it 9 years ago, that was only within a couple of years of Tucker's passing. And so a lot of his friends and family still went to the school, and it was really, really, it was a huge, huge tournament where we used to not be able to find enough space.
Wow.
Right.
So now it's kind of a matter of we're trying to bring awareness to just like a Sick Kids Foundation and not necessarily make it about somebody who you know.
Gotcha,
Because a lot
yeah.
of those families have phased out.
Yep.
But you and I were talking, and it was really great for the kids that because it's on a weekend, most of the kids that play hockey are playing hockey.
Right.
And so a lot of the kids that were playing there had never played hockey, have never played in a hockey tournament. Where there's like 4 rules, like no slap shots, no body checking, wear the equipment, no scorekeeping. And it's just a fun, we throw 20 minutes on the clock, game's over, game's over. There's no playoffs, there's no moving on, there's no winning. So it just removes a lot of the barriers from kids who are worried about the dynamic that like competitive hockey brings
Right.
in a really fun environment. So
Yeah.
yeah, next year we're
Especially out in like the area where we live, like hockey's pretty big. Like the hockey kids are good. Like
Very good, yeah.
Little kids that can skate circles around me. Like they've got skill. So to see, like, it would be very intimidating to try to go into something like that, or even if you've played with them at school and you're like, I don't know if I want to be out there if that person's out there. But it truly, like, watching it reminded me of like playing with my friends outside. Totally. Where it was just like the ball goes over and like behind the net and you're still trying to get it, or you kick it out or throw it out. Like you're just like it was like homeschooled, like
that playground hockey.
playground hockey. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
just really, really cool. It was a lot of fun.
One year
like
it
that.
was a full out snowstorm, and all the dads showed up with the shovels, and they were shoveling throughout the games and
Oh,
Boney Pass.
yes.
It was awesome. Now, just for the record, Dave said it was a beautiful day. It was actually about minus 23 degrees.
When I showed up, it was beautiful.
The sun was shining.
the morning
Dave was
crew,
there.
The
This
morning
being-
crew, not so much.
This became all about Dave. He was like, "Oh my gosh, there you are, there you are." Arya, he was like pushing Arya to the side. He's just trying to get to his people, just trying to get a word in with him. I texted him. I was like, "Hey, if you have time for me, you can find me here." Social butterfly over
It's
there.
true, but it's again, there was a little aspect of it. One, like I could tell my daughter was like, "Okay, Dad, like pay attention to me now," because there was like I just like walk in the door talking with Brent, then another person, and it was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible!" But it was like cool for Arya to see me in that element as
Right.
well. Of,
Yeah.
As far as like, I want my kids to be social the way that I am, and to see me interact and know all these random people. She's like, how do you know these people? I'm like, you just gotta be nice to people and they'll remember you. It's not that hard. I mean, if you're a dick, they'll remember you too,
true,
but
it's true.
they're not gonna want to talk to you. But yeah, she wanted to like show me that she was practicing her shot and like, here, am I doing it right? And I'm like, yeah, you're fine, you're fine. So yeah, what are you up to now?
You're doing great, kid.
No, I wasn't a bad dad. I gave her the attention. And yeah, she scored a goal. She got one goal and she was pumped
it was a
about
great
it.
day.
And my daughter, I was talking about this with my wife, I think just the other night after the ball hockey. I was like, she has my confidence. We got back from that hockey tournament. She's like, I'm pretty sure I'm natural. I think I'm made for this. I think
WHL, here
this is where I am. Yeah. And it caused my wife and I to have a bit of a conversation, and it's something I want to know more from my parents. I do not think it was intentional, but how did they create so much confidence in me? Because I am just a very confident person.
Right.
I truly believe that like I could do anything I wanted to do. The only thing I can't do is grow some more hair, which we talked about before we pressed record. It's the one spot in my life that I lack
You know what?
confidence.
You can be confident once you shave your head, Dave.
But
You
I-
rock the
yeah,
beard.
well, I
Just
don't know.
Just be one of those shaved head guys.
I don't know about that. I don't think my wife will let me.
You can do it, I think. You can take it right down.
You can rock
yeah.
it.
With that
I told
facial
him
hair?
that we were at the cottage when he had it all wet and slicked back, but he had the big beard. It's a
Yeah.
good look for him.
I don't remember those days.
I'm working on
They
it.
disappeared.
You'll have to
very
talk
quickly.
joy into it.
Yeah.
But I see that in my daughter, and I'm like, I want to very carefully like continue to
Nurture that.
that, because there is just something so powerful about that feeling of like, I don't know, like you almost feel invincible in a good way of like, I can do that. I can do anything. And I was trying to like analyze what it was about my upbringing that caused that, or that
Right.
what did they do? And there wasn't anything necessarily that they did. One thing that my wife pointed out was that I didn't get punished. Like I didn't get spanked or soap in the mouth
Right.
and stuff like that. So I don't have a correlation to making a bad decision or doing something
Right.
and getting in trouble. And I don't know if that just has been something like, yes, I made mistakes and I got in trouble, but I never was punished.
Right. You
if that
mainly
makes
dealt
sense.
with natural consequences. You didn't
Yeah.
deal with consequences because of a parental decision.
Right. And there wasn't like not good enough. Like you didn't get good enough grades.
Right.
My parents didn't come down on me for those things. It was very much just nurtured this like positive vibes and you can
Right.
do it and everything. Like, yeah, that's fine. Like you're doing great. Like on the, what I was doing. Cause even like playing hockey growing up, I was a more defensive player. I didn't score a lot of goals, but my dad would praise the defensive things that I did and
Right.
like would bring those up. It wasn't like a, yeah, you did okay out there, but like, you know, all the other kids are scoring. You want
Right.
to go score some goals? And it's like, no, like he recognized that I got satisfaction out of stopping goals as
Right.
much as they did getting goals, right?
Was that a thing for all of your siblings, or just for you because you were the youngest and you got the
I
special
don't
treatment?
know. I don't think.
Because like,
They
is it
were-
the same? Like, do they have the same sense of confidence, or
I think they do. Like
Yeah.
my brother is a very outgoing,
Yeah.
confident person, and like he came to church a couple weeks ago, and like afterwards they ask him like, does anybody have any questions? And sure enough, he asks the question right away, and it's like his first time there, but he feels that he can.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did we have that? And then my sister is like one of the ballsiest people out there. She is so like not afraid of risk.
Yeah.
She's tried starting up so many different startup companies. She's traveled the world. She's worked in different countries. Like she's like very outgoing in
Yeah.
that sense. And it's just like, wow, like what is it about that? Like there's some good things and bad things obviously with
Yeah.
everything, but I don't know. And I have to ask them if they did punish them differently than me, or that's what I was like, I want to find out from them. What is
Yeah.
the thing that they did? Did they do it intentionally? Did you not even realize what you were doing
or
while
was
you
it
were
something
doing
they
it?
did, or is like some of it's just DNA too, right? Like
Yeah.
both your parents, like I know them well, obviously, and they're both pretty outgoing people,
Right.
and like super eager to talk to anybody out there, and like they set that example, I think, for you guys too, of like you don't need to be afraid of people, like they're just people.
Yeah.
Maybe that is it. Maybe that was like Arya seeing you being confident, being
Right.
able to talk to different people.
Right.
You don't know how far that goes. I've talked, Meg and I've talked about that a lot with Murphy, because she has zero fear of people, and I've been terrified of that, to be honest, of like her willingness to just talk to anyone.
Right.
Where, you know, you grow up in an age of stranger danger, and then you have this little girl who's just like, hi, how are you? Will you be my friend now? And it's a 60-year-old man. Like, not cool. But like hearing like, so we walked to a restaurant yesterday, and she's walking with one of her little friends, and again, just like random person walking by, and I see her Murph by me. Hi. We're just like, whoop. Oh, hi. She turned to her friend. She's like, yeah, I like to just say hi to people when I walk past them.
Oh,
that's beautiful?
That's the best. And
Yeah.
like she does. She genuinely, like everywhere we go, she's always talking to people, and like she doesn't have that fear set in yet of
Yeah.
like judgment or whatever the rest of us walk around with, where it's like, yeah, I want her to hold on to that. Like, I don't want her to get instilled a natural fear of people.
Right.
I want her to just, yeah, think of the best of them.
Yeah.
Stay a kid.
Right.
Be judgment free.
Right?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like when you just see kids in school, and they it's funny because when you start to have a more like culturally diverse classroom, you get a lot of different names, and as you're learning to pronounce the names, it can be a bit of a process sometimes. But we'll have like genuine white kids that will get like angry at me because I say a name wrong, and they're like, "No, it's just this." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just trying. I will
doing
get
my
it.
best,
I have like
dude."
750 names. I'm pretty good."
Yeah.
But like they don't think of it as like a cultural name. It's just the kid's name.
Yeah.
Right. Or we've had students that might be like a selected mute, and they'll be like, yeah, they just don't like, they'll just say here for them and not think anything of it.
Right.
They have zero bias and judgment, and it is so beautiful.
Really?
That they, well, the younger that they are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the older that they become, then the more like societal norms or whatever they think that whatever social media is showing or telling them, that I think they probably lose a little bit of that like beautiful innocence. But you don't want to take that away. You're right.
Yeah.
Like you, especially when she's doing it in your company.
Yeah.
Like there's no danger
Absolutely.
to it. And if there ever was a situation where you're like, oh, maybe not,
Yeah.
you would just teach from that moment.
Yeah, and that's just our job as parents, Meg and I, right? To make sure that she's aware of what she can be aware of. And like, okay, this is all fine and good. You never walk away with somebody, even though if they seem really friendly, you introduce yourself, they introduce themselves.
Yeah.
If they ever say, hey, come with me, that's never an option, right? And like making sure that she's aware of those little things along the way, but trying to hold on to, yeah, that innocence as long as we can.
So along that train of thought,
Okay.
I've got a question from our podcast notes here.
Okay.
Pretty sure this is a Brian James Jensen question.
very good.
So we're looking to you to come up with some answers here. It's a deep question.
It's going to be beautiful when he answers this.
It's a deep question because Brian is a deep thought person, and when he puts pen to paper, when fingers to phone, he types.
Yeah, pen to paper
whatever.
sounded
It
better.
sounds better.
Fingers to
Anyways,
phone.
Type my thoughts.
so
Yeah.
along the line of this kind of conversation, will you allow yourself to recognize your best traits and lean into them, or will you wallow in the shadow of the traits you are envious of and continue to waste your time chasing them?
Did I write that?
I think you did.
Can you say it again?
Will you allow yourself to recognize your best traits and lean into them? Or will you wallow in the shadow of the traits that you're envious of and continue to waste time chasing them? So I'm just thinking of it as like me talking about my confidence. There are traits of myself that I wish I had more of, or more skills in certain areas, or more confidence in certain areas. But I do find that I think that is one thing that I do lean into, is the things that I am good at, diving at those. Do you have traits in your life that you're envious of other people of that wallow in? Like, do you find yourself stuck wishing you were something else?
Are you looking at me?
I believe
question.
I believe the question was directed at you, and you were going to say something.
Anybody
beautiful.
can throw their
Yeah,
notes
yeah.
in here.
I personally don't find myself wallowing very often.
Wallowing is a strong word.
yeah.
This is a wrong word.
I think I also lean into my strengths. But of course I definitely compare myself to people sometimes and wish I was more like I had more. Sometimes I wish I was more outgoing or whatnot. Just because I feel like it's very beneficial in life to be outgoing, because it leads to a lot of good conversation and makes relationship in general easier. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't say that I waste time wallowing too much.
I've been thinking a lot about it recently. I'm reading a book called Gap and Gain, and it's kind of talking about living in the gain rather than living in the gap, where the gap is who you think you should be, and the gain is recognizing how much you've gone through to get to where you are.
Right.
So I find often, especially like as parents, we can find ourselves in traps of we'll be happy when.
Yeah.
Like when you're going through it with toddlers or little phases, it's I'll be happy when the kids can just like wipe their own ass, or I'll be happy when they have their own driver's license and they can drive themselves places, or I'll be happy when, and you're setting like a deadline for when you can be happy versus just being happy along
Finding
the
the
way.
happiness in where you're at.
So it's kind of made me think a lot about those aspects of like comparison within other parents, where you can see other parents doing things, whether it's going on trips or having their kids in this stuff, or their kids have the nicest clothes, and you're kind of caught in this gap of comparing what they have and how their family dynamic operates, or freaking TJ and Carolee, like you said, just like off to France to raise their kids there for 6 months. And it's like, oh, what the hell are they doing that I'm not doing? Like, but that's
very
not
different jobs.
Yeah, but that's also, I don't know if that's necessarily something that I want, but you see somebody doing something and you're like, and you
It'd be
can,
so cool to do that.
you can find yourself caught in that gap of where they are and where you think you are. And you've created this timeline that you're putting people on, as opposed to looking at your family as a whole and seeing how far you've come as a family and the growth that your kids have made and what they can do now and all those aspects.
Yeah, I was rereading that question. I think I actually wrote it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think
pretty
I
sure
wrote that question.
Yeah, I think I came out of therapy actually and wrote that question down because
I don't.
something.
I don't use the word wallow.
Yeah,
so.
that's what was like. Wait a minute, I remember
Joey
writing
had deep
wallow.
thoughts.
I was convinced it was a song lyric. I'm like, there's no way any of you guys wrote this. That's total bullshit.
I
He
did.
for sure went out and he was like, she said this. I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna steal this for sure.
100% inspired by
I
therapy.
paid good money for
Okay,
this.
good. Joey, break it down then.
So a lot of it was to do within even your dynamic between you and your partner when it comes to parenting, and the subject of comparing yourself to your partner and the things that they're good at when it comes to parenting your kids, and instead of recognizing, hey, this is something where you're strong at, so I don't have to be strong at that. Meg and I have dealt with it a few times in our relationship where I'm just very much the calm one, I'll say. Less reactionary. So she'll often compare herself to me and get down on herself for not being more like me in that sense.
Right.
Where we've had great discussions since then to be like, no, I don't want her to be more like me in that sense, because I think our kids need both. I think our kids need a representation of someone who absorbs information and doesn't give them a reaction. And an example of someone like Meg who will give a reaction right away, because there's going to be good and bad times with that. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but like she can celebrate with the kids in a way that I can't. When they come home and they have a perfect mark, she's able to have that big reaction that they're looking for to say, hey, like you guys did such an amazing job. I'm so proud of you, where I have to work at that. And like, I'm not going to give them that same feedback in the same way that she can.
Right.
So I think that was kind of the motivation behind that question, is just like, can you allow yourself to recognize what you are good at, when, like I'll say, especially when it comes to parenting, and give yourself those kudos of like, no, I'm good at this, this, and this, so I'm going to lean into that.
Right.
Yes, there's always room for growth. If there's things that you're really dropping the ball on or not stepping up on, I'm not saying just leave those to the wayside or just let your partner deal with it.
Therapist said it.
Yeah, I'm not good at diapers, babe. Like that's your strong suit. You can change them all. Like that's not what we're saying here. Is more just give yourself credit where you are good. Lean into that when you can. But then also I think that allows you to give your partner credit for the stuff that they do really well and try to lift them up and push them to keep doing that kind of stuff.
And why is it so much easier in a professional setting than it is in like marriage? Where I think of like within our work dynamic, we know each other's strong suits and we push and dive in those directions. As far as like, we've never, like between the two of us, we've never had conflict over me doing the sales and going and meeting people, or you doing the finances, and I'm like, oh man, I need to learn finances so that I can do this and not Joey. And it's like, you're strong at that, you go. I'm strong at this, I go. Brian has his strong suits with his tools and what he can create in the cabinetry and finished custom pieces that he has that we can't. And it's like, you hand those over and you're excited to watch that person excel at what they do. But then when it's more personal on a family side, it's like, no, I should be able to do that too, or I should be able to.
I think it's the tangibility, maybe that's a word, of like seeing that in the workforce where it's like, if we lean into our strengths, the company will be more successful, generate more profit, and there's a means to that end.
Right.
Where it's tough to see the means to the end of doing that in a relationship and with parenting, where it's like, you're not necessarily motivated by the fact that, hey, if we each lean into our strengths, we're going to have the best possible relationship with our kids and
Right.
we're going to flourish. And like, maybe that is the case, but it's harder to maybe see that where, yeah, within the work setting, it's very easy to say, hey, stick to what we're really good at and we're going to excel all together.
I think as a parent too, though, you might, like, especially if you're having trouble like connecting with your kids, you might see the way that your spouse connects with your kids, and you're like, I want to be that.
Yeah.
I want to
Right.
do that. I want to be able to connect in that way.
Yeah. Sure.
But you have to find your own way to connect with your kids. It's not going to be the exact same way. So that might play into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since those kids go through those seasons that we've talked about before, right? We're like, mom's the only one that can do anything. And then a couple months later, dad's the only one that can do anything, right?
Yeah.
And though that plays into that exact kind of mindset where you're just seeing your kids always prefer your partner. And it's like, okay, I must clearly be doing something wrong here because they keep deferring to you. So what can I change? Instead of like, nope, this is just kids and how they operate, like status quo, keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and I know we talk about it a lot, but like wrestling is one of those
Yeah,
things. Like
yeah.
being physical with your kids, like just like throwing them around is like an easy way for that I connect with my kids that my wife doesn't.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to be like that. Like that's a very simple example, but yeah, something like that.
I don't actually know. Like I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, why is it? It's similar that when you're having like a bad day, you take it out on the person that you're closest to. Like, why is it that the person who's your best friend, who you're closest with, who you're committed to for life, that you're going through life with, that you end up in a comparison at times? Like, why in that relationship that should be like the most cherished relationship, is it hard to live in the gains and to appreciate and use each other's strengths, but at the workplace it's easy and it comes naturally? Like, why
I
is
wonder
that?
if, and like I could be way off here, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But the whole aspect of equality between a household and two working incomes in a lot of homes, there became a lot more of a everybody should be able to do everything
Right.
kind of roles across the board, where maybe that isn't the actual case. Maybe some people, just like you said, like, should we be diving into the strong suits? Like, I take out the garbage and recycling for the most part in my household.
Right.
This is a dumb example, but that's what I do. My wife doesn't often do that. She can do it. She's capable of it. It's not what she does.
Right.
She does some other things that I don't do, but then there are tasks that we do both do. Should there be a full equality of everybody has to be able to do every aspect of the home within the home and it's shared completely? Or are there tasks and stuff that you just end up doing?
I think that's completely dependent on the relationship, and it's like that's more just like divide and conquer.
Right.
It's more finding a balance there. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily everybody has to do all of the things, because that would just be redundant.
But is it talked about or resented? Would be what, like, I wonder if people have that.
If they feel like the balance is way off, then I would say for sure resentment would build up quickly.
Right.
That's what kind of popped in my head with your question of it, Brent, was like, I think the reason why it's not often talked about is the fear of actually talking about it. Because then does stuff come out where there is resentment because of a misbalance in who's doing what around the home or anything like that, right? It's just, and it's not a conversation or anything that has often been modeled either. Like, this isn't, we talk about that all the time on
Right,
here,
it's
about how,
very
like,
new.
Yeah, we're having conversations that in history parents have never had before, right? And partners have never had with each other, where it's like there's way less playbooks on this
And
stuff.
it is very relationship to relationship, because
Yes.
some people are totally fine with a very traditional
So I think that's a
dynamic.
good question then, is how much does your household resemble your household growing up? For me, mine is very similar to the household I had growing up, where my dad worked, my mom stayed at home. She had some odd jobs that she did here and there. But for the most part, she did the laundry, the cooking.
Right.
My dad would jump in every now and then. He would take us to sports. He would pick us, like, come to school, do some of those things still. My household very similarly resembles that,
Right.
where I do some of the same stuff. But I know for you, Joe, like, your
Yeah, it's very different than my
household
household.
now is very different
Yeah.
than what you grew up in. And
It's much
has
closer
there,
to my wife's household.
right.
Yeah.
So then has there been conflict throughout that?
Yeah.
Or has it been challenging for you because you had a set mindset that was like ingrained in you from all the years growing up, and
Right.
because it's just what you're seeing and experiencing that you're having to rewire?
Yeah, and I think to that I would say Meg did a fantastic job of bringing that stuff up as a concern for her early on, even before we got married.
Oh, really?
So because she knew through our conversations and for hanging out at the house and whatever, that was my dynamic at home, that dad did all the working and mom did all the housekeeping, and her family dynamic was very different. Both of her parents worked and they were very much team effort on everything. Calm down. So she had brought that up early, that was one of her big fears, that like once we got into our own home and it was just the two of us, that I was going to fall into that kind of role and expect her to maintain the home while I just worked. And that's not what she wanted. So she did a good job of bringing that up. So then it just became, it had to be a conscious effort. And yeah, like anything, we've had our bumps along the way and we've tried to figure it out as best we can. And I think we've done a fairly good job of that.
Give us the bumps, give us the dirt. No,
And then I don't even think it is like we just had moments where maybe I wasn't stepping up the way that I could have been, and
Or that
whether
she
or not
was
Spurs
expecting.
expectations were there that weren't being met. Yeah, and we've had to talk and work our way through a bunch of those things, but you do it as best you can. You keep communicating, and I think for us, I think the other thing too was learning about her and why that was a fear, and how much it means to her when I do the things around the house, and how that actually speaks to her. As I don't even want to say the love language thing because I feel like that gets overdone, but like it is that acts of service that like she appreciates that so much.
Yeah.
And so that I know when I'm doing that stuff, then that's showing her that I do care for her and I love her and our family, that it becomes easier for me to do that, because then it's like, okay, I'm not that I'm doing it to see anything out of it, but I can see that I'm showing that to her. So
Right.
now there's something bigger to it rather than me just doing the dishes. It's something that I'm like, no, I'm choosing to do that because I know what it's going to mean to her.
Right.
And it makes it easier to make that choice.
So what about you guys? Is your current household different than it was growing up?
That's a really great question, because I actually have a really hard time remembering my childhood, and I don't know why that is. Actually, you and I got in a conversation about that one time. That why, like, were things happening in my childhood, and Joe mentioned this on a previous episode about therapy, where my brain almost shut off to protect itself. But I don't remember like bad things happening. Like I wouldn't say, do I think that my parents ever had a healthy marriage or still do? No, I don't, at least in my opinion. But I was never like a hostile environment. Was there ever the odd fight? Yes. And are there the odd things that stick out to me? But I don't really, I remember my dad was predominantly like, he was the food guy and he would do lunches
okay.
for school. So I remember that was a thing. I remember my mom was the homework person, so she would do that. But my dad never played a sport in his life. My mom would have been the quote like the athletic one, but she wasn't like a huge athlete.
Yeah.
So they definitely had little pieces like that come to mind. I think I'm just of the mindset now where both partners are always just doing the best they can every given day, no matter what is happening. And if that means that they have the energy to do a couple of extra things, that they do that. And if they don't have it, then you appreciate there's a reason why that's not happening. And I didn't always think that way. It took a lot of learning to get to that point. But we have to trust that our partner is always just doing and giving the best they can. And I don't think it's up to any of us to say, how come you're not doing that? What do they really need to spell out to you why they're not doing it? Like, it's not going to help them feel any better. It's not going to get the job done outside of being resentful and being hurt. So I think in most households, people are aware that there's things that need to get done. If there's a hamper of laundry that needs washed, we know it needs done. If there's dishes that need washed, we know it needs done. So when people have the energy and the time to do it, they're going to do it. And in our house, we're lucky. We're very 50-50. It all depends on the day and the week. But we're really different where, like, for my day, I'm really fortunate that my day ends a lot earlier than most jobs, right?
Right.
Like I have hours where I'm able to come home and I can do lunch dishes, and I can maybe I could stop and get groceries, or I could start to prep dinner. But I don't necessarily at that point. And it's funny, I had a conversation with someone the other day where by the time I get to bath time or story time, bedtime, I'm usually more spent than I want to be at those times. And the conversation I was having was, it's hard because I'm blessed with that opportunity to have that time, and I get to be with the kids and I get to do all those things. But then in those times where bedtime should be, Mark was talking about it, where it should be like, I don't want to be saying, go to bed, go to bed, go to bed. I want to say like, let's go lay down and talk. And I want to, but I don't have it in me.
Yeah.
And then there's the father that might get home a little bit later, and so they haven't necessarily had to pick up pieces A, B, and C,
Right.
but they have the energy and the interest and the like, I want to be with my kids now because I didn't get those hours with them.
Yeah.
And those times, like bath time with little kids, is like a really precious time. And I would find that during that time for me, I'd be like, okay, let's go, let's get clean, let's get going.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off now looking back that now my kids just go and have a shower. And
Right.
I don't get to enjoy that time anymore. And I don't want to say
But
I
you will
regret
be
it.
happier when your kids just shower on their own.
Yeah.
We literally said those words tonight out.
It is true. It is true. So it's hard because, yeah, like yes, our house is different than my house growing up in a lot of ways. But I just think that those roles, they come differently to different people.
Yeah.
What was really interesting when I was talking to a friend the other day about it is, and he said something, and I think he was just trying to make me think it, and he would never actually say the words. He goes, yeah, so like you don't necessarily do bedtime, and you don't necessarily do bath time and those things. And he goes, and your kids are just going to grow up and they're going to think that that's just not something that dads do. And I was like, oh, you prick. He goes, but it doesn't but then they think that you're the dad that's there at all their concerts and you take them to all their practices. Like there's other ways that I know that I give myself, but you do need to be prepared that your kids are constantly watching you and they are modeling their world of what dad looks like, what mom looks like, what family looks like, what love looks like. And it's a lot of fucking pressure.
It is. They're putting
So
all that
glad
together every day.
You know what takes some pressure off? I saw a TikTok video or an Instagram video saying that you only need to devote 20 minutes of solid time with each kid each day
Okay.
That's
to
all
be
they
like
need.
to make a change in their to be like
A positive
super
influence,
impactful in their life.
Start the timer.
I have no idea.
Okay, get out of my face. Next.
That's just one video.
Buzzer goes off.
It's one video I saw.
Yeah.
Could mean nothing.
20 minutes, 2 kids are done. I'm off to video games. Dadding complete.
It still sounded like a lot though. I was like,
I got too many kids.
Yeah, 3 kids, that's an hour. I don't know. That's an hour of dedication.
does it count when
stopped
I'm
at 2.
driving their ass to and from practices every time? Does that count?
3 for 1.
I do
really
love them
hard
though.
to do
Camera, I do
solo.
love them.
Yeah.
It's hard to do solo time when you got multiple kids.
Yeah.
Especially when you're all in the same house together. It's difficult.
Right.
But it goes a long way. Like even
does.
we had a conversation, Christy and I were talking the other day, and Emmett outright said it, is he needs one-on-one time with us.
Right.
And
Oh,
he
yeah.
like thrives in it.
Yeah.
And we were saying like we really need to start to make that a priority because he's outright telling us. It's not even like we have to read between the lines of like, well, why do we think this? He's like, no, like you idiots. Like just, I'm spelling
This
it
is
out.
all I need.
I am spelling it out for you. You want to know why I'm doing this? Here it is.
Yeah.
So, but there's
enough.
it will never come back to bite you to give your kid more time and
definitely
attention and more love.
Yeah. And it's hard to do.
Brian's turn.
In my household, I would say it's not super different than how it was when there are differences, but mostly like Maddie does a lot of the home stuff. So it's like, it's not it's probably more similar to the way I grew up than Maddie would hope that it is. Like anytime, like 90% of the time, if we're butting heads, it's because like she feels like I'm not doing enough at home. And like I'll admit that, well, like there's a lot of times where I feel like, well, we butt heads because a lot of the times, I've said it before on this show, that I feel like I'm giving everything that I can. And so like we've had that conversation, but there's definitely lots of things where like lots of times where I'll notice that I'm kind of like just doing what my dad used to do kind of thing.
Right.
Or like kind of trending in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm getting pulled back to equality
Right, fair enough.
a little bit more. Like I think that I do a lot more than maybe like how things were divided with my parents. But I will say that I like 13, 14 years into our relationship, and I'm still learning like new ways that I can, you know, make a bigger impact in the home, basically. Yeah, I'm starting to just accept the fact that I'm going to have to be like cleanup guy in our house.
Yeah.
That's why I like started to try and take control of the Lego situation.
Fair enough.
I literally spent most of the weekend cleaning the house, or like cleaning parts of the house, because it's impossible to clean the entire house.
Do your kids go room to room and just like you chase them?
Oh yeah, it's,
Like, we're like, you can't
literally
keep up.
impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
this
okay,
weekend
that's-
I focused on the kitchen and I focused on the living room in the evenings, and that was like that's what I did. But
You just go room to room, just trash and shit.
yeah,
Just
there's
like,
no way. There's no way to stay.
They're
on
just
top
little
of
tiny
it.
hurricanes.
Like, where do you get all this stuff?
Yeah.
You put the effort in to move this here. You are going to then move it back.
Yep.
Yeah,
You move it back.
but like
Move it back.
as Joey was talking about, like just learning that like this is a way that I can kind of serve my wife, and then also like serve the family as a whole. Like it's just when the place is tidy,
Right.
it's just better. It
Yeah.
just feels better.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think for me, it was getting to the point because very similarly, like I've started to come into more of that role too, of like cleanup of dishes, and like realizing that because Meg, my wife, does a lot of that stuff, especially the cooking and stuff. She has so much on her mind, and her mind doesn't work in that pattern of I'll do this and I'll clean up as I go, and I'll put that away, and I'll pour the milk, and then the milk goes back, and then I'll do this and this. It's just very much I do the thing and then I put it down, and then I move on to the next thing, because she's thinking I got to do this. So that I've started literally, like, especially our mornings, it's hilarious because I don't even know if she realizes this, but I literally follow her around and clean up after her.
That's me now too. Yeah, I do the
But
same.
it's great because then, like, by the time we get the kids out, you walk back into the kitchen, take a peek, you're like, it's nice, everything's clear. But there's a time we walk back, and what the happened in here?
Well, she's like, man, I'm so organized. I'm doing such a good job.
I don't remember closing that door.
like, literally to that point, like, I'm just mimicking her
We
movements.
did
putting
joke
things
about
away.
Joe's mom being the one that like wipes your ass before you like
Oh,
finish
yeah.
moving. Like she would be like, you would have a glass and you'd put it down on the counter and she'd be washing it. And you're like, I wasn't done with that.
Yeah,
but
I didn't
all
even
right.
finish that drink, and you dumped it out and
So
cleaned the
maybe
dish.
you're channeling a little bit of mom
It
in
could
there.
be a
we
little bit
don't
of that,
know.
and that's fine too.
But I also really relate to what you were saying. You were saying, Brent, in terms of like just kind of understanding where your partner's at, and if things aren't being taken care of, then there's a reason for that. And I have zero expectations of my wife for like keeping the house tidy or whatever. Like if I'm feeling that it needs to be done, then it's like that's my responsibility at that point. Like
Right.
and yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, is just kind of being able to read your partner.
I think the whole gap in the gain concept for me works a lot in that when you see some other people or hear about other people's lifestyles and they've got the tidiest house, or you go to somebody's house and you're like, how the fuck does it look like this? Mine's a wreck. Or people are apologizing. I'm sorry, my house is a mess. And you're like, this is a mess. Have you seen mine? But like you're balancing that gap. But for me, so much of it is just like the time of life you're living in.
Yeah.
Because for me, like when we were when I was more on the tools and you're working your ass off all day, you come home maybe 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, maybe 6:30 by the time you're walking in the door, and the family's just finishing dinner. Then you're reheating what was left over for you, eating your dinner. then jumping into bedtime. You don't have, by the time kids are in bed, you are fried and you just don't have the energy to be able to contribute in that way. And then there's other times when, like now, especially being more in the office and at home, where I haven't exercised my body and beat myself up all day, and we finish dinner and I can do the dishes and I'm happy about it, and I have the mental ability, the physical ability to be able to contribute to that. Where I think just like time of life, when you think of when you have young kids and you're sleep deprived, how much can you contribute then? So like to not measure yourselves by other people, but where you are in life currently, and be able to have those conversations of
Taking
like,
that into account,
yeah, like, look, like this is okay right now. This isn't forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be always, but right now,
Yeah.
this is okay.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, like when I say my house is clean, lots of people would walk in my house and say, your house is a disaster still.
But you're
It's all
measuring the
relative.
game.
It's
You're
all
measuring
relative.
the game. Yeah, it's not about the gap.
I feel like that's one of the big, like, what to expect when expecting when, like, getting into a relationship, one, and then two, once you have kids, is like that whole 50-50 thing. Like, 50-50 in a relationship, those days, you maybe have 8 of those in a whole year.
Yeah.
That where things are actually 50-50. And the thing that they don't tell you is like, yeah, there's going to be days where it's going to need to be 70-30. There's going to be days when it's 90-10. There's going to be days when it's 10-10.
Yeah.
Neither of you have it. You're getting 20% of what needs to be done, and that's all that you and your partner can do. And nobody really tells you about that or how to navigate it, because then you're both just upset. You've both fallen short of your expectations for yourself and maybe the ones that you subliminally set for your partner. So now it's like, how do you walk through that? Because now the kids are tired or they're still up. The house is a disaster. You had to order in dinner again. There's garbage everywhere. It's like, those are the trenches that you end up going through often, more often than not. Exactly. With like 2 people working, or even if it's just 1 people working and multiple kids at home, like it is tough. But then to your point, Dave, like that's a stage of life. It's survival mode. Get through it. Like that's all you got to do. Get through it, be prosperous, and then get to the other side where you can start to actually consciously start to plan. And now we can start to try to get to a place where it's 50-50, right?
Yeah.
And if you need help planning, Regal One software is one of the best softwares out there to plan your railing for your outdoor deck project.
Crushing transitions.
If you're looking for a railing, first off, you better be choosing Regal. They've got Urban Rail if you're tighter on a budget, Regal 123 if you're like feeling frisky, and then if you really want to go for it, Crystal Rail, let's go! You'll have
clear.
the nicest deck in your neighborhood, and you can plan it all out with their software, Regal One. So you don't even have to download this. It's a website. You can map out your deck. It's going to give you the measurements for the whole deck, the cut list, everything you need to build this. The instructions start to finish. Regal One and Regal Ideas is empowering you to tackle your backyard this
I
spring.
think our listeners want to know what kind of decks you guys have at your house.
You've got a patio.
Next question, please.
Sorry, he must have been asking me. I've got a beautiful Regal railing on my deck.
With a Regal
And it's
rail.
as easy as 1, 2, 3. And you know what's even better is, so I was lucky enough to have the Brolas in person at my place. But if you can't have them in person, you might even see a wonderful Deckstars webinar where you could learn from the Brolas, just like they're in their backyard. You might not be able to drink beer with them, but they are just as helpful on there as they were in person. So thank you to them for offering such wonderful services.
And if you're wondering where you can purchase Regal Ideas, you can do that at your local home hardware. Don't look. The Kawartha Group. I'm looking. Don't look. And they will deliver to many areas. So though they are local to the Kawartha area, if you're in Bridge North, Coboconk, Lakefield, Lindsay, or Millbrook, if you're in any of those areas or surrounding area, you can contact them. They've got plenty of stock and delivery trucks to be able to help you out.
Yeah. And recent trigger words, they're Canadian made, Canadian operated. So there's that too.
Support. I
Throwing
mean,
that out
we've
there.
got a bit of an American following too, so let's be careful here, boys.
I think they're on board with us. I think they're on our side.
Yeah, it's true.
I've got some closing thoughts a closing question that I would love your input on.
Okay, very good.
Listener on Instagram. That's right. We are on Instagram at The Real Dad Podcast. Go follow along.
Yep.
Kevin Molina asked us, could you guys share your first thoughts when you found out that you guys were going to be dads. So he is expecting. He's been listening to the podcast for a little while now, and his wife and him are expecting in September this year.
Oh wow!
So
Coming
they are in the early stages of pregnancy here. And
Exciting.
he's been listening to this podcast.
Kevin? Is that what you said?
Kevin, yes.
Kevin.
Kevin Molino.
I don't know why we're full naming him, but let's just
That's
go
what he
Kevin. Kevin.
Congratulations,
But
Kevin.
He sent us a really nice message just
Yeah.
saying that like listening to our stories and experiences has been amazing to listen to. Thank you for being able to be so vulnerable. You guys are really helping me think about what dad I want to be. Thought that was really
the
cool.
key.
So can you think back? Let's go to our guest first, Brent.
Suck it.
You have 3 kids,
3 kids.
single and then twins.
Yes.
Walk me through both of those. The first one, was it expected or planned?
First one was
Wait, I said the
He
same
said
thing.
to us,
Yeah.
It was expected, but not planned.
Unexpected or
Yeah,
planned?
we were trying for the first one. We were like actively ready to become parents. Excited with the idea of becoming parents. And it's really funny how things work. If you don't already, well, listener, if you wouldn't know me, I'm a crybaby. But I remember it so clearly. I was just watching a show and there was like a Pampers Huggies commercial on. And for whatever reason, I'm watching this thing and I literally just start crying at a diaper commercial.
Yeah.
Which I look back on now and I was like, maybe a little much, but true story. That actually did happen.
Yep.
And then Christy came downstairs literally like 10 seconds after that and showed me a pregnancy test. And it was the weirdest,
wild.
super weird timing that it happened. But I felt excited. I think I felt excited because I was already like moved and bawling my eyes out at people not sleeping all night, changing diapers. It doesn't look like that, Kevin, just for the record.
Just to be clear.
It can be beautiful, it's just not like that. But so the first was really exciting, and with the first, it's the unknown, right? Like there's the excitement of all of the adventures, and we all hear that there's challenges, and there's going to be, but it was definitely very different because of the unknown. Where when Christy became pregnant the second time, it was okay, great, you're pregnant, this is exciting, and we were excited about Emmett having a sibling,
Right.
And it was kind of funny because throughout those first, I don't know, 8-10 weeks, whatever it is, we were cracking jokes that Christy was showing very quickly, and
Right.
and there's all those things, and we're like, oh, it's twins, it's this and that, some sort of sick joke where like you can like wish things into existence. Be careful what you wish for. But I remember we went to the ultrasound clinic, and I was making jokes about it even as she was heading in about like, you've got 2 in there, like there's for sure twins in there. And I had a coffee cup, and what should have been like a 10-minute ultrasound was like 30 minutes, and I'm just sitting there, and at that point I've shredded.
Oh, yeah.
The cup is just paper machete. There's nothing left, and the mouth has gone dry, and I'm just waiting. And I was like, holy fuck, I did it. I actually like wished it into existence. I was like, this is a gift. Like I should use this for something great. So, and then they asked me to come into the room, and there they were, and there's 2 heartbeats and 2 bodies. And at that point it's this insane, like I almost probably wasn't as genuinely surprised as I should have, because I felt like I knew
Right.
without knowing. But then the fear probably set in for that first little bit, where I wanted to be excited, but the reality was, one, we needed to now experience a pregnancy of twins and all of the risks and complications, and wear and tear and fatigue on Christy, and growing 2 humans is no joke.
Yeah.
So there was that whole process of, we thought we knew what we were getting, and yes, we did, but I don't think we realized the magnitude of 2 at a time. Like feedings were like hours at a time. There in some relationships where the mother might be nursing, or even if they're not, it can be where one spouse is doing the feeding. Well, that's not the case here. right? Like both people are up the whole time. If you're looking for something to do, watch The Office. We binged the whole lot. We've been watching it at like 2:30 in the
Lots of
morning.
seasons.
It was
How-
awesome.
How old were you when you had your first?
Oh, great question. So Emmett is 9 now. So I was 33.
Okay.
33. So I would say I was older.
So
compared to earlier.
33-year-old Brent,
Yes.
was he wanting and excited to become a dad? Was he worried about what dad he might be?
I was excited about becoming a dad. I was optimistic about being a good dad. I think I always wanted to be like a Phil from Modern Family. I always wanted to be like
We all do.
I always wanted to be a date. Well, you're probably doing it. I'm disappointed that I am a less fun dad at times than I want it to be.
Okay.
Like Phil, fun dad is pretty great. And maybe it's just in my unique situation of the amount of time I'm with the kids, but I am not having as much fun as I would like
Right.
with this time because life is
So yeah, I was gonna say
crazy.
like with what you expected being a dad to be and now being where you are,
Right.
is it what you thought it would be? Is it different? Or like you kind of answered that
yeah,
and saying
it's
that
it's
like,
what you expected. Well, no, it's what you expect it to be. It's harder than what you think it would be.
oh,
So like you think there's going to be challenges, but the challenges are harder.
There's no way to prepare for it.
There's
Yeah.
no
I think as a
Yeah.
kid, you'd never really know the challenges your parents are facing or going through. So you don't really, you just see the things that they do. Like you don't know how hard it really can be.
Well, and I think maybe we should give those parents more credit that if we're not necessarily seeing all of the difficulties, they've done a really good job
Right.
of
Yeah,
not exposing
that's in a
us.
healthy household.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, and 100% is not always the case. Like I think my parents did a really good job of trying to make sure my sister and I got to do the things we wanted to do, even though the money was never there. And they didn't necessarily talk about money struggles when we were kids, and we didn't have to take that with us to school. And there's a lot of houses where that's not the case. And maybe fingers are even pointed at kids about why there might not be more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's what you expect or what you think it's going to be like, but the highs are higher and the lows might be a little bit tougher.
I would agree with
That's a
that.
good way to say
Brian, you've got 3 kids.
Yep.
Do you remember the first and when you found out that moment?
There wasn't like a big moment.
Okay.
I don't remember. Like, yeah, we found out at the same time. There wasn't like a big surprise. I think she had a chemical, chemical pregnancy that didn't work out in the beginning. So that means that lost the baby very early. So when we found out that she was pregnant with Leo, our oldest, it was like it was joy, but it was just like very cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
And with each of our kids, I never really allowed myself to get too attached to the idea until I saw like the until we like got like to like 10 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
I saw the ultrasound and I could start like the whole seeing is believing element.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and then I would just get impatient.
It's true. It's a long way.
I would want it to be here so bad, it would just the excitement would build and build and build.
Yeah.
Especially because like, thankfully we had really good, like she had really good pregnancies for the most part. Like she had really horrible symptoms some of the times, but they went really well. So. Yeah, there wasn't. It was mostly just like a crescendo,
Right.
to the
And
birth.
Waiting game.
Were you ready at that point to become a dad? Like, had you guys decided, like,
Yes, I was
we're pulling
29.
the goalie, let's go for it?
Yeah, I was 29, and we had been married for a few years already, and some of our friends had started getting pregnant, and then it was starting to hit her really hard that
Aw.
like I want this bad.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever. I was having fun. Like we had like just gone on a long vacation. that was like a goal of ours to do before we had kids. So we had checked off that box, so I was ready to go. But yeah, we had ended up having less kids than we anticipated having, but I think that's
Wild.
because it's a little bit more challenging than we anticipated, like Brent said. But yeah,
Nice.
yeah. You guys?
Joey?
Oh, me first?
Sucker.
Very good. Yeah, Meg told me with Murphy, I was on a sleep-in day, and then she did the pregnancy test. We were actively trying, so we had made the decision that we thought we were ready. So she gave me a sleep-in, and then she came in with a piece of toast that said #1 dad on it. She had written it in peanut butter, and it took me half a second.
Peanut butter, that's hard to do.
It was. I was very impressed with her. Peanut
Maybe
butter.
she
get a
did it in
delicious
honey, and the
snack.
honey just melted away before it got there.
Before she got up there, son of a bitch. Yeah, so I didn't eat the toast. But yeah, I remember being kind of similar to you, Brian. Like I guarded myself, I think. There was that element of, you do hear all the stories, and miscarriages are very common. And yeah, there was a sense of guarding myself and not letting myself get too excited. And I'd say for me, it even lasted right until the babies came. Because I think there was still that very much for me, a feeling of like needing to protect Meg and like just watch her, make sure all of her needs are met, to make sure that everything can go kind of as smooth as it possibly can.
Yeah.
Through the whole scenario, because as the dad or the father in the scenario, you really are helpless. Like there's not really much that you can do through anything. Like your partner is literally growing a human inside of them, and you were just the one who planted the seeds. You're just along for the ride, right?
So you're the one to blame.
Yeah,
a lot of the
exactly.
time.
Yeah, when things are going rough, it's your kid, just so you're aware. But yeah, I think things changed for me. I think started me on this journey that I'm still currently on, of like discovering more of who I am and discovering what my emotions are and what it means to let those out and let them show. And it's something that I didn't really do before at all. And then once you have kids, like you said with that commercial, Brent, like it changes your chemistry, which is wild. Like it does so much to a woman's body when she's pregnant. But I think there's a lot of things that happen to a father as they go through that scenario that you don't necessarily expect as far as what it can do to change you.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like now I am the type that I would cry at an emotional commercial, and that never would have been me before, right?
Right.
Like,
I was crying a couple days ago. I started crying during a show, just hit me right off guard.
yeah,
Wild
And I
robot
look
for
over
sure.
to see, I was like, Maddie's got to be crying too, right?
right.
I look over, she's totally fine.
Stone cold.
She was not. She's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yeah, that hit me really hard."
Yeah.
It's true. You don't
just-
expect it,
yeah.
but it can change you, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then not to say that it's the same experience for everybody, and don't think there's something wrong with you if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Everybody's their own person, but yeah, I'd say that's the part I didn't expect, was how much it made me changed that part of me.
Right.
I think for the better. And then I don't think it has been. I don't think I focused as much on what kind of father I want to be until we started doing this podcast. I think that's what made me the most conscious of being purposeful around those thoughts. I
Yeah.
think on my own, it's just what needs to happen right now. I'm very much an in the present type of person. I don't think of the future. Meg and I had a bunch of these conversations where she would always want to ask me, how many kids did you picture having? Like, what kind of dad were you going to be? What were your kids going to do? I'd never thought about that stuff. Like, I didn't have a plan in my head for how many kids that I wanted or what kind of dad I wanted to be. I'm very much I'm dealing with what's in front of me right now, and that's it. But then going through this kind of, I don't know, it triggered that in me, I guess.
Right.
Of that, no, I do want to be a certain way. And I think for me, if I'm going to want to be a certain way, I need to figure out how I'm going to get there, because it doesn't just happen. Like, there's certain things can be manifested, but certain things you have to actually put effort in and learn things and change things about yourself and look into things. And that's the process of becoming a good parent, I think.
So as you said, you were more guarded and didn't allow yourself to kind of get connected in that. That was all pre-therapy, Joe,
Yep.
who you've kind of unlocked through this the therapy. What was the word that you used to describe yourself? The
Apathy.
apathy.
Yep.
Is there an element to you that has any regret that you didn't allow yourself to feel more during those stages, or content with that?
Yes. I think it is both. I struggle with that thought process a lot,
Right.
of not wanting to change that side of myself, but can't help but reflect and have a bit of regret around not being a bit different in that way.
Right.
We often joke about the fact that you cried harder than I did at my wedding, where it's like I didn't shed a tear as Meg walked down the aisle, and I don't have those, even at both childbirths, I didn't have that overcoming emotion. And I've experienced that in my life and in many different ways, and more so now since I've had the kids in different situations that have happened. But in those moments, I tend to revert back to the apathy more than anything. Like in high intensity moments, I see it as a mini superpower that I can lock in. But at the same time, that doesn't allow me to experience, I guess, the heightened emotions that I could experience in those moments as far as joy is concerned. But in those moments, I'm very in it. Like
that's where I think like the more you continue to unlock that aspect of yourself, the more you might be able to choose to turn it on and off, because I think there really is a very strong value to that as well. To be able to be that strong person in the bad situations, but it's in the good situations being able to fully feel that good and happy as well.
Yeah, because there's an element of celebrating with people and like being able to celebrate with your partner as those moments happen, because Meg's obviously not as much in childbirth because you're just wiped out when you go through something like that. But like when you have a partner who does experience and feel and is more emotional, there can become this sense of like, why aren't you excited? Like, do you not want to be doing this right now? It's like, that's not it at all. I don't show it in the same way that you do, right?
Yeah. Where for me, I was the very blubbery, crying, excited person.
Nobody's surprised.
So we had my son when I was 26. We got married when I was 20. My wife was 21.
I thought you were going to say 12. I really thought you were going to say 12.
We started dating when I was 14. So we, having dated for so long, then we got married at 26 years, not having kids. I think we thought we might have had kids earlier, but we ended up having to move back in with her parents. She didn't want to have a baby while living with her parents. And she was my wife is a very planned person like that. So we very much bought the house and then had the kid kind of thing, where she followed and like checked her boxes as she was going. So we were very intentional about it when we decided that we wanted to have kids. I have always wanted to be a dad. I'm somebody that, like, when I was younger, I helped out with kid programs. I loved being around kids and having fun with kids. So I always wanted to be a dad and very much pictured myself as the dad that would just be playing and doing all the things with the kids and all those aspects. I don't quite remember the moment Joy told me she was pregnant. I've been like, even during all these conversations, I can't go back to find that memory. But the one thing that we did, the one thing that I remembered, well, the other two, I think it was, but with the first, when we told my parents, it was their first grandkid. And we bought, those willow tree statues. We bought the grandma and grandpa, and then we gave them to them, and they opened them and were like, huh? And like kind of looked at us. And it was like a very special moment telling my parents that they were going to be grandparents. And that moment, like, we had the ultrasound pictures with us, and like that still holds like such a special part in my heart. And each of our kids were very planned in the sense that we were deciding to go for it. It took different amounts of time to get pregnant each time. But I would say that from what my expectations were as a dad to where I am, I think I'm more critical on myself than I am in reality, in that I wanted to be more active, more fun dad. And I think I am that, but there's just a level of like realism that I didn't know. I was naive when I was younger to think of what parenting would be.
It's not just all fun.
Yeah, you don't realize all the responsibilities that come with it. The work, the paying bills, the cleaning of the house, all the things that come with parenting, where there's so many of those days where you so badly want to be the dad that's on the ground playing and not a worry in the world. But part of with me that comes with being very emotional and putting everything on my sleeve is that I feel all the stress and the pressure around as well, where I don't have the ability sometimes to put whether it's work or those stresses behind me and tune them out and be completely present.
Right.
I think there's an element, especially like starting our own business. Well, I had just had our second kid.
Yeah.
And the difference I think that my first son got of the dad that my first kid, my son got versus who my third child got
Right.
is very different in that like just what my life was, the state of my life, where I was living, what we were doing, how busy we were. There were aspects of things that I think I missed out on with her as a baby that I didn't with my son because
Right.
I had the ability to be more
That's
present
totally fair,
then.
though.
Yeah. But it's just, I think that's the thing I didn't expect when I was becoming a parent.
Right.
You think you know how it's going to go, but you don't realize how each one's going to be different and how each time throughout life as you grow, as your work changes, how that's going to affect parenting and what kind of a dad you can be.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny that you brought up Phil, like Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. For those of you who don't know who Phil is that we talk about.
Not a real parent.
Not a real parent. But I think you're seeing, even within that character, you're seeing a dad of kids who are older. They're all teens, and I think the young boy is around like 10. We don't get to see Phil Dunphy when they were all toddlers.
Very fair.
When they had work stress, when they had debt, when they were like had all the stress around them, right? Like that was
So I could still be Phil.
You can still be Phil.
There's
You're on
times.
your journey to Phil.
Honestly,
That's what we're all
You
at.
write your own script, Brent.
How
Yeah,
much
you're-
do we
you're
beat
really
ourselves? How much do we beat ourselves up for the place that we're in?
Yeah.
When it's like you still have so many years of parenting, and like this guy Kevin messaging, who's like just about to jump into it. It's like,
embarking.
can you imagine that? Like I ran into what was it? Where there was like a 19? No, the guy who came out to hockey. And he was 19 years old, and we're like, "You've got so much life ahead of you, buddy!
yeah.
Like, oh,
Over
to be
twice
young
your age.
again." Like, but like this, he's just embarking into being a dad, and there's still so much ahead. But like, we're in it, and you're critical about who you are, but there's still so much dadding ahead of you. It's not like we're just done dadding right now.
Yeah, we're still very much in it.
So, but something you brought up earlier in it when you talk about dating, what do you do when you were listing about being a parent, but then you basically listed a bunch of jobs that aren't necessarily the job of a parent? So you were like, well, you do dishes, you do laundry, you do whatever.
That's a spouse.
So like, yes, we have different roles. You're the role of the husband, you're the role of the father, the role of the teacher, the boss, the contract, whatever it is. But why, when you just were talking about parenting, did it really have
Nothing
not
to do with
much to do with actually
Good point.
loving,
Adulting
caring?
gets in the way.
Yeah.
It does.
Everything gets in the way. Like it's what? So
Yeah.
why is that? Why? Like when they say where does your priorities go, or where do you give your energy, and do we give energy in the wrong places or at the wrong times? And what should be our priority, or how do we balance that wonderful word that's not realistic? How do we do that?
I've heard people say you can only pick two, and it's a home cooked meal, spend time with your kids, and a clean house. You can't have all three. You can only pick two, because if you're doing one, then something has to give, kind of thing. And I think there is an impossible balance to it, and I think that's I think we do a lot of trading off as parents, but it's a really good point that it can become a focus that maybe it shouldn't be. And I think maybe that's what I was trying to say, even where through the times of life, what is more important to you? Having a clean home or spending the time with the kid? If you only could choose, what is it? Some people, they need to have that clean, and they don't necessarily care if the quality time was the quality time.
Well,
or
that
not,
ripples
right?
then, right?
Yeah.
Like you've had the conversation where like, how do we get our spouse in the mood if all they're worried about is a dirty house?
Man,
Absolutely.
there's so many
So
things to
and that's the
think
thing. I think
about.
it's all encompassing. I think that's the difference
Yeah.
too. Like you can't separate the two. I don't think there's parenting things and household chores. I think it's all under the same umbrella, because in reality, your kids don't actually need that much from you. Like thinking about the things
20
that
minutes a
they-
day,
20
guys.
minutes.
Yeah.
I'm living and dying on 20 minutes here.
But like the parenting things that you have to do for your kids aren't the things absorbing up your time. Even when they're babies, you're changing them, you're getting them dressed, and you're feeding them. throughout that whole day, that's maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of straight time. It's all of the other things that you have to do to create a healthy, nurturing home for the child that become a part of parenting.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, they are menial chores and they're the same ones you did before you had kids, but adding the kids is what makes them now somehow parenting chores and makes them that much more difficult, because now you are having to prioritize and choose what is able to get done. As the kids get older, they do start to demand maybe a little bit more time. You're having to do activities with them, or decide whether or not you are doing activities and things that go along with that do end up eating more of your time. But yeah, I think in my opinion, it is just called kind of all encompassing of
Life.
running a life.
But it's also like the things that can make a unsafe household. Like if that balance isn't there, and if that communication isn't there, and couples are bickering and fighting, like
Yeah.
divorce is at an all-time high. Like I remember our sister, or your Joey's sister, my sister-in-law, who's a lawyer, was saying like during COVID especially,
Yeah.
divorce rates were skyrocketing. They were busy. They were booming in the lawyer business.
It's a booming industry.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you're forced to be at home together and see like that house dynamic. How is that working? And if it's not working and you're just butting heads and conflicting, then it's causing more harm than good within the family dynamic. So I think that's almost why those aspects are so important, because if they aren't handled well, then it doesn't create a safe household for kids and has the opportunity to divide a home, where I think there's obviously a lot of contributing factors to a couple getting to that place. Yeah. But
you're not able to be the parent you want to be.
Yeah.
If
all
all
that
those
stuff.
things are there. And like thinking about like your investment into your relationship with your partner, that's a part of your parenting.
Yeah.
Where like date nights is a part of parenting. Where it's like you're one thing you're giving your kids.
it's feeding a relationship.
Exactly. It's feeding your relationship, which is the example to your kids, to what you're saying earlier, Brent, of like how they absorb and how they learn. You and your partner are setting the example for your kids of what a mutual loving relationship looks like. Yes, in the way that you love your kid, that's one example that they're seeing, but they're also seeing how you love your partner, how you guys support each other, how you talk through conflict, all of the things in between, how you run the household all together, right? So I think all of those little things are things that they're absorbing as well, and they become a part of your parenting, even though they were simple tasks before. Date night before kids is just, hey, you want to go out to a movie tonight? Sure, we have
Walk
no
out the door.
responsibilities, right? But all the responsibilities in the world get piled on top of kids. Now you're having to plan that a month in advance and set up that, but that becomes a part of your parenting.
Because the relationship with your spouse isn't prioritized as much as taking care of the kids.
Yeah.
And has putting too much of a focus on being a good parent or putting your kids in all these activities had a negative correlation to the spousal relationship.
Yeah, and absolutely again, yeah. Dynamics.
Aside all the difficulties, I just want to say, Kevin, or any other person that's expecting a child
Yes.
in the next whenever, if you're expecting in the next 10 months, I'm so excited for you,
Absolutely.
because there is literally nothing more incredible than watching your spouse bring a child into this world. It is the most incredible experience that life has to offer. And I'm very excited for you. And I'm very jealous that I will never get to experience that again.
Yeah.
Do any of
totally
you like crave baby cuddles now? Now that
Oh,
you
I
don't-
always
Yeah.
crave baby.
because it's like I remember my sister, anytime there's a baby around, she would just be like going to get the
Yeah.
baby, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think much of it. And now if I could just get some snuggles and then just be like, I won't see you at 2,
Yeah, exactly.
3, 4,
Morning.
5, 6.
Our youngest is still small enough that we get lots of cuddles still,
Nice.
so I'm not quite.
Man.
Kevin, you soak
Yeah.
that in, bud. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
the smell. Oh, I can.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
the
it's
best.
beautiful.
So
There's
Kevin,
nothing
keep us
like it.
posted. We're here for you along this journey. I think one thing that we didn't touch on, and I know Brian was trying to bring a bright side, and I'm going to bring the dark side again, is just the amount of fear a dad can feel through a pregnancy, because you are out of control. It's out of your control. You've done your job. It's in your wife's hands now to grow this baby. And it can be scary as a dad. And I think, like Joey said, like guarding himself along the way, because there is a level of not wanting to get too attached because you don't know what could happen along that journey. But allow yourself to feel happy, to feel those moments, but understand that if you are feeling afraid, that's normal and it's completely okay. And we are here with you on this journey. I think my concept when we were having all of our kids, because a lot of people can choose to not tell people until a certain stage of pregnancy. I told people right away, especially in my close bubble, because if anything did happen, I wanted them to know to be able to support me. Because it can be a very hard time for anybody that goes through something like that. And often you don't want to talk about it, but if you have people that know that can support you in a way that doesn't have to be talking, can be really, really valuable. So have a great journey there. And continuing listening
do all
to the
the
Real Dad
things.
podcast.
Yeah.
Go to all the ultrasound appointments if you
Yes.
can. Like, just soak it all in.
Be as involved
the
as you
whole-
can be.
yeah.
Yeah. And start practicing your patience now. And I think too, like, don't be discouraged if you don't feel that connection right out of the gate.
Right.
That's a very good
If you
point.
don't feel connection when baby's in the belly still, that's totally normal. Even once baby's out. Like, I know I definitely struggled with that. I didn't really feel connected with my kids until they were able to be engaged with eye contact, and you could tell that there was a sense of they knew that I was another human being, and which takes weeks. Like, your kid for the first little bit is just a little potato, and their eyes just wander, and they don't know what the hell's happening.
Especially for the first, it's just such a mind freak.
Oh man,
to
it's
like
crazy.
the fact that you're holding something that you've made. It's just wild. It's just,
And you know what we've been doing recently, and the kids love it, is telling them what they were like as babies. Like, they want to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like, I'll carry my kid around and I will still like pat them going shh, shh, shh.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
exact same rhythm that I would have done.
Yeah.
The same rhythm that I would do when I would actually lean on the wall as I would go downstairs,
Yeah.
because I would be so asleep that I was convinced that I was going to yard sale.
Yeah.
And Everly loves it. I will pick her up and I will
Aw.
shush her, and we're in a time with phones and videos where like the access to like their memories.
yeah.
And it's awesome. Like, Christy will send me pictures throughout the day of like 5 years ago today, and it's wicked.
Yeah.
It is wicked.
that is
Sorry, we went a bit dark, but it's
Yeah,
wicked.
it really is. It goes fast.
It does. And like
Flies
that,
by.
like
Holy
crap.
Murph still, like every once in a while, and she did it tonight. She was like, "Oh, I need to carry me upstairs to bed like I'm a baby again." So she'll go like a stiff board and then like fall back into my arms, but I'll carry her up in my arms like I did when she was a kid. And like now she's turning 8 this year, and she's a pretty tall and pretty big kid, and like getting her up the stairs is a bit of a struggle.
That's a good carry.
Yeah, it's a good.
You gotta stay
good
fit.
carry
You gotta
across
stay
the arms.
fit.
But man, like, yeah, it just brings you back to exactly like you're saying, Brent. Like, I used to just be in one arm, like there.
Oh,
from
the
your
football
elbow to your
hold.
head. Exactly, that's what it was. And like for her, both kids, like this was the move.
Yeah.
Just keep them moving up and down,
Oh,
up and
yeah.
down. But like that's where they fit. We're just in your hands, right? And
Being an
not anymore.
experienced dad and holding
got all
a
the
baby
moves.
with all the confidence in the world and watching a new dad
Yeah.
who's feeling so nervous and awkward about
Oh,
how to
yeah.
hold the baby, it is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the difference
Yeah.
once you've got the
That
experience.
sparked a good memory. Leo, our oldest, like face in my hand.
Oh,
like
okay.
that's how he would like cradle my arm.
Yeah.
and like that's how he would fall asleep. It was so cute.
We're
Oh, Kev,
excited
thanks for
you.
bringing it back up. That is nice. It's wicked. Don't be alarmed when the nurse manhandles your kid. You're like, oh, just take it easy.
Be prepared for that.
Yeah,
They
throw them
really-
around a little.
You get your revenge. You get to do the exact same thing when they're older and you're wrestling with them. Just toss them around. But you're like, you got to take it easy. It's like,
Yeah.
We're talking like 15 hours old and you're just gentle.
Just be
Take it
gentle. I made
Don't,
that.
whatever you do, don't call the nurse out on that. either.
That ends poorly for everybody.
I'm sure they get a good earful
Oh, yeah.
sometimes.
Well,